Today I'm just going to go through a bit of our history, some of our reports, exactly what we're doing. Just to get an indication from you guys, who's using Lightstone at the moment? That's a great turnout. Fantastic. Thank you very much for your support. It's very appreciated. Okay. So I'm going to go through our introduction, just our history, where we started, what we're doing at the moment. One of our popular reports is our property report. I'm going to go through that, how we search, what we see in the actual reports, effective price counseling using Lightstone's valuations. We've got 3 different valuation models. I'm going to go through that. There are suburb, town, and complex reports. We're very strong in our statistical analysis on areas and sectional titles, suburbs, towns. Our transfers reports, it's a very underused report. It's a query-driven report, and it allows you to do effective price counseling, creating lists of registrations that have happened by certain filters. Some of our other reports, our new property risk report, which is one of the newest reports that Lightstone is doing at the moment. And then just finally, just to go through some of our subscription pricing and some of the options that we have. Great. So Lightstone's been around for 14 years now. We built a system around a mortgage risk model, which now services all the major banks. So the banks use our automated valuation model as part of their process. So if they're happy with the valuation or the confidence scores that we've given to the banks, they generally grant the value on their desktop. Otherwise, if they're not confident in our scores, they'll send out a valuer to the site. In 2008, we released it to the estate agencies, developers, auctioneers, anybody that needs this type of data. And ever since then, we've been starting to improve the reports, adding new graphs. Our analytics guys have been very busy over the last 6 months in terms of these reports, adding new graphs, adding new reports, just having a look at the look and feel and accessibility of Lightstone. Our data comes directly from the deeds offices. We get it on a weekly basis, and we get it from every deeds office in the country. We also get data from Government Gazette, Stats SA, SIPSI, our clients, some of the municipalities. As I said, our statisticians and analysts are continually analyzing our reports and just trying to make it as easy as possible for you guys. Just to put you at ease, the deeds data is public domain information and legally obtainable from any deeds office throughout South Africa. We also supply high-level credit risk information and consumer contact details. So to put your mind at ease, we are currently POPI compliant at the moment, as selling this data is considered lawful pursuit of business. I don't know what's going to happen going forward, but at the moment, it's all compliant. So the property report. The property report is a detail-rich report focusing on one specific property. It can be used for both buyers and sellers. So we look at property ownership validation by putting in an IRF number or an ID number, seeing who owns the property, what's the physical address, what's the sales date, what's the registration date, that kind of information, as well as obviously our property valuation, which I'm going to go through a little bit more in detail just now. As far as our searching options go, there's various ways of searching, and I'll show you the screens just now. But pretty much you can search by street address, you can search by IRF number, deed town, owner's name, ID number. We've also got a fantastic map search, and the map search is based on Google Maps with an IRF overlay. Okay, it is one of the better ways of searching for those of you who are using Lightstone. The map search is a better way of searching if you've got physical addresses. So the first page that we have is our advanced search page. This is where you're using names, surnames, ID numbers, IRF numbers, sectional title names, those kind of things. For those of you who are using Lightstone, remember that when you're searching for a particular property, try not to fill out all these fields. All of these things are linked, so if you fill in everything and you spell a name wrong or a surname wrong, you're not going to get a result. So the idea on this particular page is to use 2 or 3 pieces of information. So you've got a name, surname, IRF number, suburb, IRF number, street, anything like that. Obviously, ID number is key. It's going to pick up every property that person owns around the country. Company name, the same. Effectively, I wouldn't use when you see the address fields at the bottom there, the suburb and the street are linked. So one of the issues that we have is that estate agents ideas of where boundaries lie or what suburbs are defined as are very different to sometimes the municipalities. So the suburb and the street are linked, so you might find that you put in a suburb and you start putting in a street and it goes blank all the time. It's because it's not linked. So I would use a suburb and an IRF, a suburb and a surname, if you're going to be using those address fields. If you're going to be searching for addresses, and you've only got addresses, which generally most of the time you will do, we go into our map search. Now you can see this map search is a couple of fields that you can use. So we've got our suburb field. So the suburb field would probably be used, maybe you don't know the physical address, but if you saw it on a map, you'd be able to identify it. And also possibly if the property was on a corner and you weren't quite sure which street it was registered on. So you put in the address, you hit search. What happens is it will highlight the area, and then you use your plus buttons on the left-hand side of the screen, and you scroll in, and it starts plotting all the IRF numbers onto the physical addresses. And as you click, as you can see on this map here, as you click on any of these IRFs, it will give you the type, the province, the municipality, the deed town, the estate name if it's in an estate, the IRF, the owner's name and surname, the ID, the suburb. And now we've changed this a bit to reflect the sales date and registration date. You can also search by state. You can search by sectional scheme. The sectional scheme is quite a nice one because if you click on a sectional scheme and you click on it, and it will give you every single owner in that particular scheme, their ID number, the IRF number, the sales date, registration date. And if you're just wanting to get a list of those owners in a specific sectional title, it's better than just getting that information. If you obviously need to see what they paid for it, then you would have to go and pull an owners in complex report, or which I'll show you in a second. But to get some free information, basically, of Lightstone, it's better to go and put in a sectional title name, click search, and it'll give you a list of every single one of them. And then obviously you've got your physical address searches. It's Google, so you would put in the number, the street address, the number, the street type, and the suburb. If you weren't sure of the suburb, you could put in the greater suburb. So it becomes a lot more friendlier in terms of searching. The one thing that we are concentrating quite heavily on is our search functionality, and to try and put in predictive words. So you put in one word and it picks up what you're actually trying to say. So we are trying to make it as easy as possible. So once we pulled the property report, some of the things that have changed is we can obviously put your logo onto the reports. We can now put your name, surname, and cell phone number, so we can make it quite personal. And what we've just done in the last month is we've been able to put your photo onto the reports. Okay, so it's important that you have individual logins for your agents so that each person can have their own photo. If you've got twin agents, you can put both of their photos together. So it just makes it nice and personal. All right, so basically what we're seeing in the report is the first part is our property details, and this is the generic stuff that you get, the property type, the province, the portion, the estate name, the suburb, gives you the last sales date, looks at the land size, your legal description for your offers, your IRF number, street address, last sales price, and your Google coordinates. It goes down and verifies the owners, so it gives them the owner's name, surname, ID, title deed, share percentage, marital status, very important, how they are married, in community, out of community. It also shows you how many owners there are. Now, obviously, that's important to see who the actual owners are. So if there's a tenant that's wanting to sell the house and it's not theirs, you can quickly see who are the actual owners of the property. So some of the other information that we have in the reports before I go into the valuation part of it, we look at the municipal valuation, we look at the zoning requirements, we put the estimated monthly rates into the reports at the moment. We look at seller's bond information. Guys, remember that we only look at bonds that are registered against the property. We obviously can't give you what's outstanding. It's personal information. But it does give you, from the bond registration data, we give a good indication of if there is still an amount outstanding. Other endorsements, as you'll see on our reports, it picks up any lost copies, interdicts, servitudes, usufructs, those kind of things, which is important to know before you want to sell a property. We also look at the last 3 transfers of the property, so some history of the property. The deeds office, as far as I understand, was digitalized in 1993, so we can get precise history of those property ownership back from then. So how it looks in our report, as I've said before, the municipal valuation, the rates amounts, the zoning categories, the bonds registered, other endorsements. You can see the transfer history by having a look at who the previous guys were, what they paid for it. Are they being ridiculous in what they're wanting? A nice functionality of Lightstone is that we give you two maps, right? We give you a municipal map on the left-hand side, and we give you a Google map on the right-hand side. Sometimes you might only see in this area, or sometimes part of Stellenbosch and Paarl, you might see only one map, but the same process applies. So what we're wanting to do with these maps is try to give you the ability to measure the area under roof. So you'll see that there's a little, it's actually an M² button now, it's changed recently. So what happens is you click on that, and what you're going to do is you want to trace the property. So you start at the 1 point. So if, for example, that was the property, you would click there, you would click there, you would click there, and you would double click there, and it gives you the approximate square meterage under roof, which is relatively accurate. Obviously one has to take into account there's overhangs and gutters, and I would take off about 8 to 10% of that figure. And if it is a double story, then obviously you would need to know, so you would need to double that particular section. The nice thing on Google is sometimes if it's a clear picture, you can actually take this little man, pick it up, drop him on the street, and it'll open up a street view of the property. Unfortunately, we are bound by the dates of Google Maps. So if it has been renovated and it was a couple of months ago, it's obviously going to pick up the old. We also give you the last 3 transfers in the street. So this also just gives you an indication of what's happening in that particular street, just who the buyers were, what they paid for it. We look at market trends, so your growth and activity. So whatever suburb the property falls into, it will give you your average prices. You see the green bars are your sectional titles, your blue bars are your freeholds, and it gives you an idea of your growth and activity, so your average prices. And then if you look at the number of transfers, it will just show you the activity. In these graphs, because obviously we built up primarily for the residential market, we'll take out commercial stuff out of these graphs so it doesn't skew the view of the residential market, as well as repos. We'll make assumptions on what vacant land is so that you can get an indication of exactly the actual trend that's happening in the market. For marketing purposes, this is a great one. We pick up all the amenities, so your closest schools, your closest hospitals, police stations, shopping centers, and how far they are from the property. So the guys are coming from out of town, they want to know where the good schools are, where the shopping centers are. This will give you a very good indication. One thing I just wanted to show you, you see on all our options within the report, there's a little hide on print button, okay? On every single section there is, so when you want to print it, and you maybe don't want to show bond details, you don't want to show sales and execution, those kind of things, maybe it's a conversation you don't really want to get involved in, you can hide it on print, and when you PDF export it, it will exclude those particular sections. Okay, so the crux of it is we're talking about the valuation process of it, and we're looking at doing effective price counseling using Lightstone. And what we say is we've developed 3 valuation tools to assist both buyers and sellers, as well as the banks, to determine a fair market value for the property. These valuation tools are based primarily on sales transfer activity in the area. So the first one is our interactive comparable sales table. Now this is embedded into the property report. It looks at the 20 most recent comparable sales. It gives you it gives you a comparable valuation. It is fully customizable. So in the main screen, there's little tick boxes on the right-hand side that you can take out. There's ability to add additional properties by going into our custom comp sales. You can also add properties that haven't registered yet. So if you've just sold a neighbor's house and it's very relevant to the deal that you're doing, you can add you can add that manually, and effectively what it will do is it will add it to the list and it will show you the change the value. So what it looks like is it looks at a comparable analysis. So we put an X where the property is, and we show you all the properties that we're using for comparison. Okay. So the reason why there might be properties that may not be comparable is because we want to give you 20. And you might find in that area 15 out of those 20 are very recent, so maybe 2015, late 2014. But because we want to give you 20, they'll start increasing the date range or broadening the date range, and it might pick up a property of 2013 or early 2014, which allows, but we do allow you to take out those properties. Okay, so this is what the comparable sales table looks like. We give you the number, the street type, the suburb, earth portion, sales date, sales price, size, rands per square meterage, the distance it is from the property, whether it's cash or bonded, and our little tick boxes on the right-hand side. So what happens is that based on all these 20, it gives you a comparable valuation. And then what the agent would do, because obviously, these systems are not the be-all and end-all of the valuation process by any means, but it does give you a starting point. It does help you to understand what's happening in the market. You obviously are professionals in your industry, so you'll know a lot of these properties, and you'll know which ones are not relevant, possibly from a renovation point of view or aesthetics. So before I go on, I just wanted to explain to you these properties that you find that are highlighted in blue. So on a monthly basis, from majority of the banks, we get all the offers to purchase. So this particular transaction is quite far down the line. It hasn't been approved as yet, but about 85% of these properties generally go through to registration, and about 15% of them fall off. So maybe they didn't have the bond, they didn't like the bond amount, they didn't get the bond for whatever reason. But I think what you really need to take out of these transactions is that there was a willing buyer and a willing seller. So somebody was very happy to accept and offer a price of whatever it is, 3.1. Maybe it's the same size, maybe it's very relevant, maybe it's not relevant, and then you can take it out. We've just included the custom comp sales, which actually sits over here now. We've just moved it down. And what you might find that once you've taken out all of these properties, you've left with maybe 5. But what's happening in the market because of the stock shortages is that people are prepared to pay a lot more, and you wanting to get it to a much higher price for whatever reason. Now, you might have identified a property that is outside of our scope in terms of the 20 sales, which you may feel is much more relevant. You would go into custom comp sales. It would open up a Google map with all the interactive, it will be more interactive. You would search for the property and add it. So that particular section is embedded in the property report, and it is part of our property report. So there's no extra cost for that. It's just one of your reports for the month. The second valuation tool is the quick valuation. Okay, this is a 10 Rand report. And effectively what this does, it gives you, the buyers and sellers, a reasonable price range, so with which the property could sell. So a confidence level of high, medium, or low would be given. And that would be our confidence levels. Okay, so you'd see the expected low, the expected high, and your confidence levels. So if the confidence level is high, it means that we're pretty happy, or our scores to the banks are quite confident that that property will sell for directly in the middle of those two values. And the higher your scores, the more chance that it will sell for the highest of those values. So what I'm saying here is if it's high, generally, if they come in with an offer of somewhere in between that, the banks would generally be happy to grant the value on the desktop. The third one, which is the automated valuation report, which is what the banks are looking at. It's 65 Rand. In addition to the range between high and low, already present in the quick valuation, the automated valuation gives Lightstone's estimated valuation of that particular property, and also breaks the confidence level down into a safety and accuracy score. So effectively, we're saying that the safety and accuracy score, we're saying that it's not an over-prediction. We feel that the property will sell for that particular value. So we'll give the estimated value, and we'll give you the confidence scores or the safety and accuracy scores. So you can see in this particular case is 93%, accuracy scores at 86%. Somebody comes in with an offer of 2.7, even up to 3.2, the banks would be happy to grant the value on the desktop. Okay, so just some continuation of this. Lightstone's banking clients look at the safety and accuracy scores when assessing their risk on extending a bond on the property. If the safety scores are under 85%, they will send a valuer to assess the property physically. If it's 85% or higher, they will be happy to grant the value on the desktop. Consumers can also use the automated valuation. So they want to determine how likely it is that a value will be sent out to the property, how likely that the bond grant will be quick and easy off the desktop valuation, and whether the price they are considering selling for is realistic reflection of the property's value. We then go into the suburb report. Now, the suburb report is a fantastic report for your buyers. It's a very good report for your agents that want to understand their areas. So you can use this report for show days as an insert into a buyer's folder. It's especially helpful for buyers, particularly those coming from out of town. Can be used for sellers to create awareness around true market conditions in their area. We look at the demographics, we look at the churn in certain areas, we look at the market stock, so how many are in estates, how many are sectional titles, how many are freeholds. Is it worthwhile for an agent to market in that area? Is it worthwhile for a principal to open up an office in that area, depending on the activity? We also look at the age of residents, the sellers and the buyers. So we give you a good indication of the target market from an age group point of view. So for a buyer that's coming in, they want to know maybe it's a young couple or maybe it's an elderly couple and they don't want to buy where the youth is increased or vice versa. So it gives you that kind of indication as well. From Stats SA, we do the census, so the demographic information. So it includes the average income, the combined income range. We look at the living standard measure. We look at between the 3 and the 12-month view of the transfers, graphs on how the banks have lent into certain areas, sales and execution, and then let me show you a sample of it. So I'm looking at, obviously, this is a suburb in Johannesburg. We look at the market stock, so it shows you how many are estates, how many are freehold, how many are sectional schemes. So if somebody was wanting to have a look at specializing in sectional schemes, for example, it would be a viable option because there are quite a few in the area. The suburb demographics, so looks at your average household income range, your predominant living standard measure. So if you've got your more informal settlements, you'll probably see low, which generally means that if they look at the running water, electricity, they fill out a form and say how many appliances you've got. So the more appliances that you put in there, and the more the electricity and the running water that you have, the higher your living standard measure is. We also look at stability. So by having a look at how long people have been living in an area before they've sold. So if you look at this particular one, you can see that, it's an even split. So you can see that 24% or even over 50% of the guys that are living there have been there for more than 8 years. And when we look at the guys that have sold, so if you're seeing a situation where 90% of the guys that have owned in that particular area have been there for more than 11 years, and all of a sudden 90% of the sellers over the last year have been there for less than 5 years, it starts asking questions. Why are they selling so quickly when majority of the people are living there for such a long time? The age of residence, like I said before, it splits it down into your stable owners, your recent buyers, and your recent sellers. So if you look at it, the stable owners, you can see that a big percentage are your middle age, your 36 to 49. And the same thing, you can see in the recent buyers, the youth are buying in here. You can see 56% over the last year have been youth. So if a young couple wants to move into this area and they want to know, is it a good fit for us? Are there young people buying in there? Are there good schools in this area? This is the kind of thing that you could tell them. That you can just say to them, well, 70 or 80% of the recent buyers over the last year have been your middle age, your mature, and your youth. So maybe it's good schools. Maybe there's new money coming in. That it gives you that good indication. And then the same thing with your recent sellers. You've seen this in our property reports. It just gives you your growth and activity, so between your sectional titles and your freeholds within the suburb, the number of registrations, so just have a look at your activity. We also look at the sales and execution, so this gives you this is very important to understand because it can artificially lower prices in an area. Again, the last thing on this report is our lending by institution. Effectively, this gives you an indication of how the banks are lending into that particular area. We've got all the major banks, your FNB, your ABSA, Standard, Nedbank. Gives you an indication of how they, what their strategy is, who's lending, who's not lending, how much have they lent for that particular period. Okay. So the transfers report, I feel, is a very underused report in Lightstone. So what it really is it's a flexible query-driven report. So if you wanted to get a list of all registrations that have taken place in your suburb or in your street, you can do this. So we give you 50 as part of a free report, and you can put in a date range, you can put in a price range, you can put in an earth size range. So it's very good for price counseling issues. So the guy says to you, I want 4 million rand for my property. You can say, well, let's have a look at every single registration that have taken place since 2014 for that same earth size range in your suburb, even in your street. And that will give you a list of who the owner is, who the buyer is, the seller, the purchase date, the purchase price, if it's bonded, what's the bond registration date, blood types, and those kind of things. No one got that, eh? Okay, that's cool. Okay, it can also assist in determining historical value as the database extends back to 1993 at a national level. Consumers with an interest in repossessed properties can track these off the transfers report. So you've got a filter for put it in the bank's name and see all the bank's properties that the banks own. Deceased estate transfers are recorded and potentially be used for sales leads by agents. So this is just what our search page looks like. So you've got property type. So you can choose all property types, or you can just signal out freeholds or sectional titles or estates or farms. If you're doing a specific example and you're looking at a price counseling issue for freeholds, then choose freeholds because you get 50 transactions per search. So if you're going to put all, it's going to pick up everything. It's going to pick up sectional titles, estates, freeholds, and everything. But if you're doing specifics, then choose something specific. So you can search by deed, town, registration, division, municipality, extension number. If you want to search by a town, you wanted to see maybe Stellenbosch and you wanted to see all the suburbs, you wanted all the suburbs within Stellenbosch and you're trying to do that kind of thing, you can use a town filter. If you only want to use a specific earth range, you can do that. So you would put in the earth number with a little dash and then the next earth number, and it'll pick up all of those earths and what the other fields that you're going to use. We look at portion range, unit range, suburbs, so we can do multiple suburbs. So if you put in a suburb there, you just click on that arrow to the right. It will go into the block and you can start typing in the next suburb. You can even do it by street. So if you wanted to get a little bit more detailed, you can do it by street. You can use sales date range or registered date range. Remember that registered date range is obviously going to pick up everything that was registered within a certain period. You can do prices from and to. So if you wanted to only look at high-end value properties, so 3 million and above or 5 million and above, or properties between 1 million and 2 million, those kind of things. Also earth sizes from and to, which is nice for price counseling. So you can get an actual list of all properties that have registered for the same earth size as maybe the property that you're looking at doing. The buyer's name, so you can put in so you want to get a history, or you wanted to get maybe the bank, put the bank's name in there and see all the properties that they own, and then the institution. So this is just what our transfer fields look like. And this is what the actual report looks like. So you can put it into a number of things. So if you wanted to send it out to a client, you can put it into a fancy PDF or Excel or Word document. It will total everything for you. It will give you the highs, it will give you the lows. But look at the information that you're getting. So it gives you the earth, the portion, the sales date, registration date, size, purchase price, price per square meterage, bonds, banks, seller's name, seller's ID, buyer's name, buyer's ID. You can use this to take out the sellers, to take an ID out, put it back into the property report in the search field, see if they've got any other properties that they may own. So also maybe if you're trying to look for stock, maybe you want to have a look at a transfers report of all transfers that have taken place between 1994 and 1995, for example. That will give you a list of all registrations that took place then. What I would do then is I'd have a look if those owners are still the owners currently, and if they are, they've been there for 20 years, and maybe it's time for them to sell. We can, most of the time you put it into an Excel spreadsheet so that you can actually just manipulate the columns, add columns, delete it. So if you know how to use these transfers reports, you can actually do quite an effective valuation and quite effective price counseling. So some of the other reports that we do, so these kind of reports, the town reports, the sectional title, and estate reports are very similar to the suburb reports. So a town report will effectively be a suburb report on steroids. So if you're wanting to look at the town of Stellenbosch and you wanted to know what suburbs make up Stellenbosch, the town report will be a good one. It will be generic information about the whole town. But if you wanted to see the suburbs that make up that town, the town report is a great one. If you're trying to fit somebody to a sectional title, it gives you a very good indication, the sectional title schemes and the estate reports. The age of owners is helpful when determining a good fit for buyers to scheme or estate. We look at the banks and see, what's their activity in it, so who's likely to grant bonds. And use this report for buyers on show days and as a starting point for price counseling of a seller. So what we do is this is what the estate report looks like. So it gives you the estate name, the suburb, the township, the municipality, your Google coordinates, your area per unit, the total size of the estate, the number of sectional titles on the estate, the number of freeholds on the estate, and the total number of properties on the estate. It will give you a map of where it is, the last 5 deeds transactions that have happened within that estate, your growth and activity. The same thing as you've seen in the suburb reports in terms of the period of ownership, so how stable is this area, the age of residents that are buying and selling, your market stock. What we've done for estates, for sectional titles, for towns and for suburbs is we've given it a ranking based on its average value. So we're only looking at average value now. So what we're saying here for this particular one is that in the country, this particular estate is ranked, I suppose it would help, 1,434 out of 5,774 estates. And what that means is the lower that number, the higher the average value. And then what it does is it plots all the other estates within the country that has that same average value. So if the guy is from out of town and he knows more or less what his budget is, he gets a good indication. So if he's from Fountain Village in Linwood, he gets an understanding that he's got 2.4 to spend. Where else can he spend it? You're trying to put him into that particular estate. It is a nice way of having a look at things. You can see the banking, the lending by institution. We also have an owners in complex and an owners in street report. Now, this is a great tool for canvassing, because what it does is it gives you a list of every single owner's name, surname, ID number, what they paid for it when it was sold and registered within a sectional title within an estate. You can put it into an Excel spreadsheet, or you can put it into a PDF document. And what's nice is that we've got links into our easy contact telephone number searches. So effectively what would happen is you'd pull this report, and if you're wanting to canvass a sectional title or estate, this is a better way of doing it, because then you just go and have a look at the owner, click on the easy contact report, and it'll open up a report. And effectively what it does is it gives you up to 3 or 4 contact telephone numbers for the client, at times an email address dependent, and the best known address for the client. So Lightstone does a number of value-added reports. So we call it additional reports. It's under our additional reports column. We do live deed searches, so a direct link to the deeds officers, so to confirm property ownership and download deeds documents. So we do title deed documents as well. We do Easy Score, which is effectively a high-level credit check. We're looking at credit risk. We're looking at affordability. This is a credit check in the sense that you need the permission of the person. However, it doesn't leave a footprint, so it doesn't affect the guy's credit history. But it does stop from wasting time. So a guy comes and says he wants to buy a property. You normally go around for 2-3 months trying to find the property. I hope it doesn't take that long. But in the end, he finds the property, and then all of a sudden he's got judgments and defaults and adverse information. This will give you a good indication from the outset to say, okay, well, you risky debt counseling. Let's see if you can sort out your stuff before we even look at this. Easy Contact, which is a contact telephone numbers. You can search by address. You don't have to have the ID. You can get the address first. CIPSI, we've got our CIPSI reports. Now, the CIPSI report might help you. If you're trying to find a property and you're wanting to contact the owners, and you see that it's registered in a CC or a PTY, the CIPSI report will allow you to put in that company name. It will give you the auditors, it will give you the address, it will give you the directors, and it will give you the directors and their ID numbers. And with those ID numbers, you can take them out, go into Easy Contact, put that in, and effectively get the contact details for that particular person. We also do Surveyor General diagrams, which is now free off our site, which is linked to the Surveyor General's offices. Our property risk report is one of the newest reports that we have under our value-added reports. It's a 65 Rand report. It's used a lot by valuers. It's used by insurance companies. It goes more into detail on the risk of a particular property than what our property report does. So if you look at the property values, it gives you the estimated value. It gives you the expected lows, expected highs. Also shows you the replacement cost value. It looks at the credit risk, so the risk quality grade. So where the banks are happy to get involved in areas based on that percentage. Distressed sales factors. Crime stats. So I understand that a lot of estate agents wouldn't want to show their clients these kind of stats, but it does show you residential crime versus non-residential crime, residential crime per 1,000 households, non-residential crime per 1,000 households. What's the residential crime growth rate between 2012, 2013, 2013, 2014? Is it increasing? Is it decreasing? So if it is decreasing, it's probably better to show them that. It just gives you an indication of your risk. It also shows you the residential crimes per 1,000 households compared to 4 surrounding suburbs. So in this case, they've taken 4 or 5 suburbs, and it shows you how does that compare. We go further into weather risk, so lightning risk, the lightning flash density, how many strikes per kilometer per year. Hail, I suppose lightning is not as predominant here as in Gauteng, but it gives you that indication. The hail delay frequency. So these are all things that insurance companies and valuers and estate agents would have a look at. We look at the flood risk, so the distance from the water body. How high are you above the water body? So we look at land characteristics, so your soil, your percentage clay, so the percentage of it, the dolomite, so how likely is your property going to fall through the ground. We also look at slopes, so slope in degrees, so more pertinent for your coastal areas where if your slope is high or quite slanted, it shows maybe views, your seismic activity, peak ground acceleration, average national PGAs. A lot smarter people put this report together than myself, so I apologize for that. I'll have to get back to you on that. It looks at the mines, the nearest mines, your straight line distance. And then lastly, I just wanted to go through the subscription pricing. So we have two different types of packages. We have a 300 Rand and we have a 600 Rand. So depending on the usage that you do. So it is a usage-based system. We've got a month-to-month, and it's broken down into three types. So a month-to-month contract on the 300 gives you 30 reports per month. 6-month contracts gives you 35, and the 12-month gives you 40 reports per month. We charge an additional 6 Rand per additional report. So if you did 41, you'd pay an extra 6 Rand. So you would need to understand the volumes that you guys are doing, because even if you're doing 80 or 90 reports per month, it's probably still better to go on the 300 package. The 600 obviously for a higher usage, and month-to-month contract starts at 160 to 210 reports. Now the reports that we include is your property report, transfers, suburb, town, estate, sectional scheme report, owners in complex and owners in street report. The Map My Area is a new system that we've developed. It's not a report as such, so it doesn't include in your number of reports, so it's free information. And what we've done with Map My Area is that we've given you the ability to create an area that you've defined, so that you can get some high-level data on that. So if you wanted to if you marketed within a suburb, only a small section of a suburb, maybe you market within over a boundary of a suburb, this is a nice way of doing it. So you could either draw the area, or you can use your EAs, which is your enumerator areas, which is pretty much pockets of between 200 and 250 households. And it will give you so what it does is that you save it. It gives you the number of registrations that have happened in that area, the total value of properties in that area, and the number of properties in that area. And once you've saved it, when you go into your home page, it will give you a list of the last 10 deeds transactions that has happened within that area. So if you're looking at high-level data and you wanted to just get an indication of the area that you're using or that you're working within, Map My Area is a fantastic tool. The additional stuff that we do, like I said, we do our automated valuation report, our live deed searches, requesting title deed documents, surveyor general diagrams, quick valuation, SIPSI reports, easy score, easy contact, and our advanced transfers reports. So you can get up to 500 transfers per at one search. It will cost $30, but we give you 50 for free as part of the one search. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
As a start, who does rentals? Hands up. So I'm the CEO of this company called PayProp, and for those of you who don't know what we do, we process rental monies for estate agencies. We've got about 850 estate agencies for whom we manage trust accounts. We process the rental transactions for about 70,000 properties every month. That's about R500 million worth of rental processed in a month. So we see a lot. I mean, I always say, I mention these figures because they make me feel good and look good, but I also say that so that you've got some context from where everything that I'm going to show you comes. It's not like I sat in a garage last night and drew pretty pictures. We literally crunch for something like a rental index, some of the numbers that you'll see now. We crunch about 4 million actual payment transactions in the rental game to get to the numbers that we show you at any given time. So there's a lot of data behind everything. So when we were asked to present, we thought, well, rather than tell you how to do rentals, we wanted to look slightly ahead and say, well, what are the challenges that we see facing rental agencies, taking into account that we deal with 850 of them every month? And there really are 6 major issues, I think, lying ahead for the rental game. And if you're not a rental agency, I promise I'm going to almost entice you to start rentals. I might dissuade some of you, but I'm going to leave some of you thinking, going, you know what, I've always thought I should do this. Maybe I should just give it a try. So these are the 6 ones. You can all read. I'll take you through them one at a time. So starting at the top, who does rentals because they love tenants? I've never seen anyone put up a hand. I mean, no one has got that sick desire to just say, you know what, I wake up in the morning and my life is there to care for the tenant, to find him a home, to make sure he's happy, to listen to how his cat died and he went to the vet and he couldn't pay his rental. You know, listening to that story warms my heart. And this is why I do rentals. So we haven't found that agent yet. So in the meantime, we're assuming that you're doing this because you want to make money. So profit is what it's all about. Now, the issue with profitability in rental agencies is what dissuades people from entering the industry is that they think it is not a profitable one to play in. You know, it's those little commissions on small amounts. You know, I'd rather sell the R1,000,000 home than do the R5,000 rental. But if you speak to agencies who've gone through 2007 to 2009, that really horrible time, the ones that have made it through in often cases are the guys who said, you know what was really lovely? I had a big rental book that carried me through the months I didn't do a sale. That recurring income is what kept my doors open. So rental income provides you with that. If you look at, just let's get to average here. First thing people always ask us is, you know, so is my agency normal? It's almost like when you meet a doctor at a party, you know, is this rash normal? You know, is my agency normal? So let me tell you a bit about normal quickly. So the national average commission is predictable 10%. It sort of varies 10.14, 10.12, but it's about 10. Here's an interesting figure for you. And I know a lot of people who run agencies don't really look at this number, but your net profit percentage on a rental portfolio is around 45%. So it's a depressing number because you didn't think that you spend more than half of what you get in commission on providing the service. It doesn't feel nice. But on the other hand, it's also a very empowering number. When you're negotiating with a landlord, and the landlord goes, well, you know, I want to drop from 10% to 8% because, you know, how expensive could it be to manage this business? This is the number you should always keep in mind. Because more than half of what that landlord's going to pay you in commission, you're going to spend providing him with this exceptional service that we'll talk about later. The next part looks at economies of scale. So people always ask us, you know, I'm running a rental portfolio, when does it start to feel good? Actually, it never does. But we do keep them sane and say, you know what, when you hit 50 properties, it starts feeling better because then economies of scale start kicking in. And when you hit 100, it feels really good because then you're making a lot of money. So if you're looking at what should I be aiming for, and we often see people get stuck sort of at 40, 50 properties because then you sort of hit the limits of your capacity in your organization. And you start thinking, now I need to add administrators and systems. If you invest behind technology and good staff, getting to 100 really makes your property portfolio optimally profitable. And that's really what those charts are about. The little dotted line just looks at net profit percentage. So you'll see over 100, you sort of hit at a 60% margin. When we look at portfolio sizes, the average agency in South Africa manages about 80 properties. That's the norm. There are about 4,000 agencies that do rentals in the country out of the 8,500 registered estate agents at the moment. Interestingly, for every one rental that's managed by an estate agent, there are 2 rentals that are not managed by an estate agent. So there's still a lot of scope in the market for convincing landlords that a managed rental option is a smart idea to go with. So there's still a lot of space. Then the next question always arises when you're at the bar. The guy goes, but I've got to make more profit from my rental portfolio. And there's really 5 big things. I mean, I'm not going to solve all your business problems in a 2-minute slide. But there is some advice here. Now, it's interesting, the top three, the portfolio size, commission percentage, and collection percentage, are the biggest influencers of profitability. And yet, when people start looking at their portfolios and how to make money, they start at the bottom. They start cutting expenses or finding different ways to charge people. Where? The three things that make your portfolio the most profitable is firstly growing it. I mean, that's sort of obvious, right? But the second one is probably the most important lever that you've got in a rental portfolio. So often we speak to agents who say, I charge 10%, but for some owners I do 8%, and for some I do 7%. You know how it starts, 10 plus VAT, then 10 minus VAT, then 8 plus VAT, then 8 minus VAT. So here's the rub. Dropping from an average of 10% commission to an 8% commission means I need to do 25% more volume to make up the profit that I've just given away. That's 25% more tenants, landlords, phone calls, evictions, just to give away what I've already had. So when you're faced with this discussion about dropping your commission to keep the landlord, remember how much additional effort you need to add onto your book to make up what you're giving away. And at some point, it doesn't become worth it. Collection percentage is another interesting figure because you can only take your commission when the rent hits the trust account. So if you have 5% of your rent consistently outstanding, that's 27,000 Rand that's always outstanding, that you never get. And you might say, look, I'll get it later, but you know what happens at the next month? You still haven't collected the previous months. You're always 5% out. So what you'll hear from Michelle Dickens, she'll tell you that 86% of tenants pay on time, and 5% of tenants actually never pay in the month that they're invoiced. So that means it's almost 3,000 Rands worth of commission that you're always chasing. And literally just improving your collection percentage, a percentage at a time. I mean, if that's a metric you want to put in your business, it's a great metric to chase in your business, collection percentage. Then we get to the last two. Look, they're nice. Auxiliary income is interesting. We've seen some of the weirdest stuff on the planet. People charging key fees and inspection fees and lease fees. And you know, those are really great because they do add a lot of profit to a portfolio because that's really clean profit. Smile doesn't cost a thing. However, you can only charge these fees if they are in the lease and if they're legal. So be very careful when you start adding on auxiliary fees. You cannot go home today and say, this crazy guy said I can charge extra fees, and I'm just going to charge it when the tenant leaves. If it's not in the lease, the tenant hasn't agreed to it, and the fees aren't legal, you can't charge them. And then we get to the last part, which is expense management. Now, expense management has got two components to it. Look, you're going to have to excuse me for 10 seconds, because I am going to tell you, automating transactions and administration through something like the paper does help you reduce administrative overhead. So there, I've said it. But on the other hand, another key variable is how you choose to pay people. Now, I'm all for fair pay. Where I do want to raise a caution is people who are starting off rental books. You know, when you start off a rental book and you're in a partnership, you've got another principal that's helping you, that is the most crucial time that you need to decide how are we going to split income. You know what happens so often? We get guys coming to us 5 years down the line. When they started the rental portfolio, it wasn't really big, it wasn't really important. Now this thing has grown, and then the one business partner says, you know what? We're splitting it 50-50, but we never agreed on 50-50 of what? Is it before costs or after costs? And I'm carrying all the costs, and I'm really not making any money. When you are starting a rental portfolio, and you are figuring out how to pay agents and how to do commission splits and how to split with business partners, make that sum as if you're already at 100 properties and then see if the sum makes sense for you. It's so often that people disregard this negotiation because it's not important right now. And then when your portfolio grows, we've seen principals that are running portfolios at a loss because they've signed up on a 50-50 commission split. And then they've got to pay the administrator, the office rental, the telephone, the bank fees, the paper fees, the audit fees, everything else. So be really clear when you are setting up staff expenses, because they're your biggest expense area. Okay. So now that you've figured out how to make all the money, we're going to get to pricing rentals. Now, the background to pricing rentals is important because I said something earlier about dropping your commissions, you know, and telling guys or landlords that you need to be able to defend your commission. How you defend your commission in this market is by showing that you are the expert in rentals. And being an expert in rental is no longer about you've got a cousin that can evict people at short notice with violence. That used to be good, no longer. Now you're becoming an almost financial advisor to a potential investor that says, I've got an extra 1.5 million, I want to buy a property, will you manage it for me? How you position yourself determines how well you can defend this commission. So let's start with pricing rentals, because that's quite important. You don't want to have a landlord that's getting too little, and you don't want to push a tenant too hard so that he starts defaulting. So if we look at the rate at which rentals change, and this is what this graph is all about. So it's the percentage by which rentals change year on year. So March 2013 to March 2014 to March 2015, etc. When the line goes down, it doesn't mean rentals are getting smaller. It just means they're growing at a slower rate. So if it's right up top, you remember June 2010 Soccer World Cup? We were all going to be rich. Who made their millions? No one, right? Because right after that, we saw rentals dropping from 12% growth all the way down to 4% as the market didn't respond. So people pushed up their prices. There's going to be this crazy demand, never materialized. And then what happens is this cycle goes up and down. It sort of peaks at 10%, and then it drops down to 4%, peaks at 10, drops down at 4. It's currently climbing. It's about 7% as of last month. And what happens here is quite a familiar dance. So the landlord says, push as hard as you can. Push, 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 puts up the rental. And then tenants start defaulting because tenants can't pay. And then the landlord says the following. He goes, you know what? Rather keep that guy in the house at 6% than me risking the marketplace with what's out there. I'd rather take a smaller increase for next year, but a good tenant has value to me. And we'll talk about good tenancy in a minute. And then we see this line dropping down and down and down and down. So what does all of this mean for you? It means if you want to defend that 10%, it's important that you understand not only the national dynamic. These numbers you can get. Go to payprop.com, download the rental index, you'll look extremely smart. But they're also about understanding the area that you're in, because we see this vary in areas across the country, from little towns to big towns. The Northern Cape's busy going crazy. It's being that area expert and really letting your ears prick up to understand what's happening in the economy around me. How do I advise a landlord around what's happening in Edgemead at the moment? Are people better off, worse off? Are house prices going up? With all of that happening, what would my position be as a rental specialist in this area? The next part, okay, this is the most obvious slide. I should actually take it out, but it just proves the point. So what this is on the left-hand side is income. This is the rate at which rentals grow. And my stats professor is like doing a face palm going, it is so obvious. In areas where people make more money, rentals grow faster. It just shows the point that if we track it in towns, understanding the underlying economy of an area helps you position better towards a landlord so that you can look like the expert and defend your commission. Getting to deposits, people rarely think about pricing deposits. People always just go, well, ask as much as you possibly can. You know, if you can get 2 months deposits, take it. And we seldom consider the position that we really put tenants in. Because you don't always ask where the tenant got the money from, if this is Wonga that's actually putting down the deposit, or a cousin that he had bond his other car for. And often you can put a tenant in a worse position by insisting on a too large deposit. So to get the graphs out of the way, what you see on the left-hand side, that 1, 1.1, 1.2, that is the deposit relative to the rental. So if it says 1.5, it means the deposit is 1.5 times the size of the rental, right? 1.5 months deposit, you get it. So on the bottom, it's got income. And what we're seeing, the causal relationship is that people with more money can pay larger deposits. That's quite obvious. But when we look at another dimension, which is the 0.33, 0.08, 0.43, that is the percentage of tenants who've had major financial delinquencies in the last 12 months. In other words, they've got a bill that's more than 90 days old. And then the weirdest thing happens. It says people who are worse off credit score-wise pay smaller deposits. Probably because they earn less. But the point is, the market doesn't really adjust for risk. It just adjusts for income. It just says, the more you earn, the more I'm going to ask you. So we've got to take one step back and say, well, why is a deposit there? A deposit is there to protect the landlord from damage. And if my only assessment tool is, can the guy afford it, rather than what's the underlying risk of the tenant, I'm making a very short-sighted judgment of my tenant. And we'll talk about judging tenants in just a second. So I'm pricing this deposit. I'm getting to a good number that the tenant can afford. I don't want to push the tenant too hard. I'm getting to a number that covers the landlord's risk adequately. What may I do with a deposit? So this is what it looks like. I've got a deposit capital that the tenant pays me. There's interest that's earned. Be very sure how you deal with interest in your lease agreement. If in the lease agreement you are silent on the matter of interest, the interest automatically accrues to the State Agency Affairs Board, of which you're entitled to half. The State Agency Affairs code of conduct, however, puts an obligation on you to speak to the tenant upfront and say, Mr. Tenant, you've got two options. You can elect to take your interest, or you can elect to leave your interest with me. I want to meet the tenant that's going to say, yeah, sure, have it. So most tenants are going to say, I want my interest. Okay? So what you end up with is the deposit, the interest, and that's your total available amount. At the end of the term, what can I subtract? So I can subtract any fees due via the contract. That's the Rental Housing Amendment Act. So that is any fee that I put in the lease that says, when this lease expires, you will pay me the following. You'll pay me for the administration of the deposit. You'll pay any fees that were still due as per body corporate rules that have been registered, et cetera, et cetera. Then I can deduct repairs, and whatever due, I can then settle with the consumer. So for now, that seems pretty simple. The trouble becomes, I'll speak to this in a minute, is how I administer the process. Because I could have done all my homework perfectly. I could have gone and priced this deposit like perfectly, assessed risk, decided how much the deposit should be. I could have received it in a trust account, sorted the interest clause, kept the money safely, and not pay attention to how I should, as an estate agent, have administered that deposit, and then put my landlord in even more risk. Because if I do not administer the process around deposits correctly, I need to repay all that money back to the tenant, and my landlord's not covered. And a landlord who's got damage to a property, and you've lost the deposit you have to give back to the tenant, is not a landlord that is going to renew a mandate with you. So let's walk through this. So I think it's section 27, I'm not sure. This is in the Rental Housing Act. It's the worst piece of legislation ever written. There's just one paragraph that I hate. Because it says to you, 7 days from this, then 2 days from that, but if it's a full moon and you skip backwards, then it's another day. It's quite crazy. This is the only way I could understand it, and I thought it would be a useful guide for you and your agents. It is important that you understand this or something similar in your agency, but that your agents understand it as well, because your agent, as the implementer of this agreement, is just as responsible. So let's start this inspectopoly gamma. You have to do an incoming inspection. You can't decide if you want to do it or not. If you do not do an incoming inspection, you cannot claim any damages on the property, and you might as well give the deposit back. What's important is that the incoming inspection needs to be done before occupation takes place. You cannot wait a month after the guy's in the house and then say, hey, you know what, by the way, I'm getting around to you now, let's quickly do the inspection. Yeah, this place is a mess. And the guy goes, no, but it was like this when I got it. If you do not do it before occupation, and here the timeline is very tight. I mean, we've had some cases where people have been out 48 hours after the tenants arrived. It's not within the law. You can't claim damages, have a nice day, move on. So it's not a guideline, it's not how you feel about it. If it's not before occupation, you cannot claim damages, might as well pay the deposit back to the tenant. You are allowed to do an interim inspection. You are not forced to do an interim inspection. However, you are forced to do an outgoing inspection, and the outgoing inspection needs to happen within 3 days of termination of the lease. So you can't wait and do it after termination. You can't do it 3 months before the guy leaves, because you need to be there as close to the day that he leaves as possible. Which means two things just in terms of general practice in your business, starting with the incoming inspection. I mean, it should be a rule in most estate agencies that I do not give that tenant a key if he's not paid the deposit and if I've not done the inspection. Those 3 things should ideally happen at the same time. And the same should happen on exit inspections. You know, when I take the keys, the last time the tenant walks through that door, I lock the door, I know this is the condition that the home is sealed and we have signed our inspection sheet and we're done. If I've done it too soon or I've done it too late, very sorry for you, you can't claim any damages. The housing tribunal is going to throw it out and you need to refund the full deposit to the tenant. Then you sit with this little dice, this little piece of chance, you know, does the tenant attend or not? So the law says you need to give the tenant reasonable notice for an inspection at a reasonable time. You can't inspect at 11 o'clock in the morning if you know he's at work. You can't do it at 2 o'clock in the morning because that's when you're available. So reasonable notice, reasonable time. If the tenant does not attend despite your best effort, you've got this option to do a landlord's inspection. So note the days. I'm not doing, oh, it's that thing. You've got 7 days from termination of the lease to do your landlord inspection. You cannot wait 3 months, 2 months, 1 month after the winter, 7 days. Then you've got 21 days from termination date, so another 14 days, in which to restore the property to its original state, not remodel it, and then refund the remaining deposit to the tenant. If you go that route, I would suggest paperwork is your friend. Your communication trail is your friend. You need to be able to prove that you've sent the tenant adequate notice, that he accepted the meeting, that he still chose to not attend. If the tenant does attend, you've got these two options. The house is in a good state. 7 days later, the tenant needs to get his money. The house is not in a good state. You restore the property. You've got 14 days from restoration, not termination. Like, I don't know why they put the word in there, but restoration, to then refund the tenant whatever's left. And if you stick to the process, you should be fine. If you do not stick to the process, you are putting your landlord at risk, and by putting a landlord at risk, you're putting your mandate at risk. By putting mandates at risk, putting your business at risk, because you're putting profit at risk. Quite simple. But here's your biggest risk. I mean, who selected a bad tenant before? The really wise ones. They say you have to be young and foolish before you can be old and wise. So you have to at least have gone through this once. Now, the problem with tenant selection is if you go into areas like Bloemfontein, and I only say this because we're not in Bloemfontein now, they say, no, we know the oak. He's in the town. Wears nice shoes, nice watch, nice car. He's in. Sign the lease. Since I heard that, I wear nicer shoes. And it's surprising how many people still do that they say, well, we're a small town. Everyone knows each other. Right. Okay, I come from a small town. It's weird. There are more efficient ways to do it, because this is the part that should scare you. We looked at the last 15,000 people who've applied for tenancy and run a thing that we call the PayProp Tenant Assessment Report. And this is what the average South African tenant looks like. So the numbers look big because, remember, this is an individual that walks into an estate agency to rent. It's not the average South African. It's not the average South African renting. This is the average South African that chooses an estate agent to find him a home as a rental option. So you have a higher income earning individual that you're dealing with. On average, this person earns 32,000 Rand gross. And there's the shocker. Forced debt repayments in a month for the average South African, 10,500 Rand. And then their rental hits at an average of 6,200. It's now 6,400 last month. And here's the misnomer, because, then there's still tax, and then he's left with like 9,000 Rand to pay everything else. And here's the problem. We think rental is the biggest expense that a person has, and we have this industry rule of thumb that says, well, rental should be about 1/3 of your income. Well, guess what? For every Rand in rental, there's 2 Rand in debt that he has to pay, with people far nastier than yourself that he can't negotiate with. Unfortunately, as an estate agent, you are in the middle. This guy cannot go to the petrol pump and negotiate terms. He can't go to Pick n Pay and say, is there a cash deposit? He can't go to his medical aid and say, can't I pay next month? If everyone else applies the screws, you, unfortunately, are the last person that he can still try and negotiate with and not paid. And that puts you in an unenviable situation, but it also gives you negotiating power with the landlords to say, I will handle this. What sits behind that 10,000 Rand number? So just ignore the green bar for now. Just look at the blue bar. CPA accounts, these are credit provider accounts. You've been given goods on credit. Edgar's, Truworths, Markham's. These are the number of accounts they have. So the average guy, I just turned 40, it's horrible. But the average guy who's in his 40s has got 9 store accounts. I thought it's crazy, then I looked through my wife's wallet. We are underperforming like crazy. It's horrible. National loan accounts. So national loan register accounts are places where you've been forwarded money in advance, credit cards, personal loans. So the average person in their 40s sits with about 4 of these things. And this is what you're competing with. This is what you have to manage. So your process of collections and dealing with non-paying tenants is of utmost importance and value to your landlord. People always ask, well, what should I do? I've only got 3 pieces of advice for you for non-paying tenants. I'm not a lawyer, but I like to encourage you to use them. So the first thing with non-payment, deal with it quickly. Don't wait the mythical 7 days. If it's the second you haven't received the money, deal with it the second right there. Deal with it harshly. Don't be nice. Be like the Edgar's guy that phones you and say you haven't paid. And the third is depersonalize. So use an alternative service. So people do listing, blacklisting, legal letters, whatever it is, but try and remove yourself from the emotion of this. So deal with it quickly, unemotionally, and harshly. And get a lawyer involved as soon as you can. That's the only piece of advice that I have after having seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of arrears. If you follow those 4 rules, you know the non-payments that go wrong are the ones that you give the guy leeway for. 7 days, oh no, pay next week, I'll pay the week after. Oh, your cat died, that's so sad. Okay, we're gonna make a plan. Sympathy costs money. The coldest rule of rentals. Unfortunately, that's the skill set that you're bringing to the party. So how should you do it differently when you're selecting tenants? Usually we do this. We look at credit score and we say, historically, have you been a good payer? But there's this other dimension of debt that you should also consider. Now, this is an extract of one of the reports that we do for tenants. And what it does in level of debt, it measures 3 things. It says, well, I look at your debt repayment relative to the rental that you're applying for. I look at the total percentage of credit available to you that you've already used. And what we find, people have used more than 75% of the credit that's been granted. So in other words, if I add all my credit cards and store accounts together, I can access 100,000 Rand. If I've used up more than 75,000 of that 100,000, the chances of me defaulting in the next 12 months are exceedingly high. So we look at that, and then we look at total debt relative to total income. And that gives us an idea on how much trouble is this guy. And it gives us a forward-looking view on, do we think he can pay his rental? And this changes the conversations that we have with tenants. So on the one hand, if a guy's sitting here where dear John does, the conversation's a simple one. It says, John, you're not in a bad financial position. You can afford the rental that you've applied for. Really happy for you. However, historically, you're just a nasty person that doesn't want to pay on time. So I can see this is your behavior, so I'm going to protect myself and my landlord against it. I'm going to double the deposit value so that I've got something in the bag for in case you exhibit that bad behavior again. If John sat up there, in the little green box, the yellow box, low risk, so up on the left-hand side, conversation's very different. Conversation is, John, I can see that historically you've always paid your bills. However, when I look at your debt situation, you are a few months away from big trouble. I think the rental amount that you've asked for is too high. You should look for a cheaper place. Affordability is not your friend right now. You are up to here in debt, and you're about 3 months away from defaulting on the rental. Let's preempt that conversation by already finding you a cheaper place. Now, you don't have to use our report to do this. I find if you read the detail in most credit checks you find available, you can get to the same answer. What's always frustrating to me is that there's some really good products in the market. And people read the first page and they go, oh, he's yellow or green or blue. Oh, shot, take him. But just page over, there's another page there that lists all the retail store accounts, the payment history. And you can build this picture up for yourself to understand how badly in debt is this individual before you let him sign the lease. Okay, so now I've jumped through all the hoops. I've gotten the rental price right, I've got the deposit price right, I've got my systems and procedure in place, we're going to manage this deposit to death, we're going to protect the landlord, we've selected the best possible tenant with the nicest shoes and the best debt ever. Now I've got to start receiving money. So we saw, it was actually a fantastic presentation on trust account management yesterday. But here's the principle. You've got a section 32.1 account into which all rentals must be received, as the gentleman said yesterday, who was a great presenter, by the way. If you haven't attended, which was the inspections session, if you haven't attended the inspection session, book for it when it comes next. The gentleman is amazing. So into the section 32.1 account comes the rental deposit, utilities, and that's where it sits. And from that account, I pay the owner, suppliers, commission, put in deposit what I need, and from my commission basket, I pay my agency. Simple enough. What we see way too often is people settling business expenses directly from the trust account. So they go, the commission is due to me anyway, so I might as well just settle my phone bill against the trust account. It's my money anyway. It's not your money until it's hit your business account. Do not put any business expenses through your trust account. It's not yours until it hits your business account. You also can't pay your staff from a trust account. The legal entity that holds the mandate, that holds the trust account, is the legal entity that gets the commission. That legal entity settles with its agents. The fact that you've got 3 agents with whom you've got commission shares is of no issue to the monies that you received in your trust account. Those things must be kept separately. We see direct settlements from trust accounts way too often. You've also got the obligation to reconcile this trust account every 30 days and then to audit it, as the gentleman said yesterday. And then we get to the last part, which is the least positive part, but the one nonetheless I want to leave you with in all seriousness, which is portfolio safety. So if I've even done all of these things, there's risk, because we're people and we make mistakes, and we don't always make mistakes. And let me preface this. This is not about saying people steal money. This is about people make errors, people make mistakes, they misapply permissions, things go wrong. So in our experience, what goes wrong? And that's where this comes from. I'm not saying judge the people next to you, but make sure that as especially a principal of an estate agency, you are aware. Because as a principal of an estate agency, fundamentally, everything that happens in that agency is on your back. If money goes missing and it was an administrator, it's you. If your agent made an error, you know what? It's you. You're responsible for everything that happens in your agency. And way too often, especially in offices that have got large sales books and a small little overworked rental desk right in the back corner, no attention is paid to the checks and balances in this portfolio, and it's a big source of risk for a business. So the first piece of risk that you need to deal with in your business is permissions. Who's allowed to do what, especially when it comes to money? And not just about clicking the pay button, but who gets to set up the transactions, who gets to capture the beneficiary details, who gets to edit beneficiary details. In other words, ask yourself, who gets to direct where the money goes? We run a small portfolio of properties that we sublet. This is the one permission I do not give away in my business ever. If you want to edit a beneficiary, thanks, I'll do it. If you want to create a beneficiary, thanks, I'll do it. I'll show you how to check beneficiary details in a minute. A healthy piece of practice in your business is to go home to your office today, take a blank piece of paper, write down everyone who's worked in your business the last 6 months and is currently working in your business, and write down what permissions people have access to in your business. You might be surprised that people who are no longer with you might still have access to your email, might still have access to whatever Dropbox sheets that you have that have got details on, have access to your bank accounts, have access to your lease documentation, they can contract on your behalf. It's a really, regardless of what you learn from rentals today, it's a really good piece of practice in a business to annually sit down and ask yourself, who's allowed to do what? Have permissions changed? Have responsibilities changed in my business? And then my last piece on permissions is to be clear to people about the responsibility that a permission entails. Personally, one of the most beautiful illustrations for me was when I joined PayProp, the board said to me, we want you to be a director. But before you sign this piece of paper, we've got the lawyers and the auditors in a room for you for the morning. And they will explain to you the risk of the piece of paper you're about to sign. They'll explain to you that you can go to jail. They'll explain to you that you can lose your house. They can explain to you that you're jointly and severally liable for bad decisions happening in this business. And if you're unsure at any point, if you're prepared to take that responsibility, don't sign the paper. We'll still pay you, but we just can't make you a director then if you're not sure about the permission. And I find people give away permissions freely because we like to empower without explaining the consequence of when it goes wrong to the people that we give these permissions to. So that's my plea on behalf of all administrators in the room, is when you ask me to approve payments, explain to me the risk, so that I can choose to say, no, I don't feel comfortable in doing this because it exposes risk to me and to the business and the people around me. Payment security risk is a simple thing that says, am I paying who I think I'm paying? Two things go wrong here. The one is I put in the wrong bank account details by accident and I end up paying. There's actually an account number at Nedbank called 01234567, I think it ends on, eh? You'd be surprised people put in a placeholder. There's one gentleman in the world that just sits back and coins the money because people just put in the wrong account details. But on the other hand, again, not to make you paranoid, but if you're a responsible principal in a rental agency, something to do once a year, pull the list of all the beneficiaries that you've paid. Look for the beneficiaries, the top 5 beneficiaries that you've paid the most frequently, not the largest number, the most frequently. Go to the bank with their bank details and say, hey bank, can you please verify for me that this person is who I think it is? The verification looks something like this. It'll tell you the account number is the same account number that we've got, the surname is the same, the ID number is the same. Then you know with all goodness in your heart you can go sleep tonight. I've been paying for the last year who I think it is. Because let's face it, if you're going to take money out of a trust account, you're not going to do it in one fell swoop and take 200,000 and run. You're going to do it in little bits over time. So I'm not saying, there's this beautiful saying that says, trust in God, but tie up your camels. This is it. Trust everyone around you, but keep yourself honest as a principal to say, I take the responsibility of monitoring because that's what I've signed up for. This is a simple way to do it. Last thing, deposit management risk. So the thing that goes wrong when people account for deposits is, A, they don't try and account for the deposits. They just go, I'm sure it's all there. We've seen people that buy portfolios, do all the due diligence, and then right at the end, they don't ask the question, is all the deposit money there? And when they bring the deposit money over, they go, but there are 10 tenants that don't have deposits. Where's the money? Problem. Because the way people account for deposits is clumsy. They look at the total amount and they go, that looks right. I've got about $1 million invoiced. There's about $1 million in the deposit account. I'm sure it's fine, right? If I take 10,000 Rand out of $1 million deposit account, you will not know. You will not know it's there. So if you really want to not fool yourself into comfort, but really give yourself comfort, you need to be able to take that big million Rand number and assign it to tenants. You want to see how this number breaks down on a per tenant basis. And does every tenant in my book have a deposit? And does this deposit roughly equate to the rental that I'm invoicing that tenant? If I cannot do that, I'm giving myself false security that everything is fine. So it's very important that you're able to do that. And if I were a principal, I'd want to do this monthly. I want to know every month that for every tenant that I've got, per individual tenant, the money is there. So from our vantage point in the industry, challenges facing rental portfolios, firstly is that you need to be profitable, otherwise it's not worth your effort. To be profitable, the single biggest thing that you can do is protect your commission. You protect your commission by being an expert at what you do, because you're playing up against private landlords that are trying to list and manage their homes themselves. How do you become that expert? You understand the market better than anyone around you. Make it your obsession to understand the underlying rental trends so that you can help landlords better price. Understand that deposits are there for landlord security, and that you know that it's not just about determining the right amount, but that your administration of that deposit is even more important than the quantity of money you're able to extract from a tenant. And then once you've done that, understand that you've got a fiduciary responsibility to treat trust funds with the respect that the name demands. It's money that's entrusted with you, and that as a principal of an agency, that means you can't be blind to the responsibilities that you have with regards to portfolio safety. It is your job as a principal to make sure that permissions are assigned, managed, and executed properly in your business. And you don't over-assign permissions to people who shouldn't have it, who don't want to take responsibility for it. It's important that you check regularly that money goes where it should go, and that you can account for every cent in your deposit book. And other than all of that, rentals is actually quite a lot of fun, right? I want to thank you for your time and your attention. If you've got any questions, you can mail me. Have a nice day.
So I want to talk to you about mobile technology and social media within your business. But very early in the presentation, I just want to put your minds at ease. I'm not going to tell you how to set up those Facebook pages and all the rest. I'm going to tell you from very recent publications that's been published around the world for social media and estate agents, what the experts in the field recommend estate agents should do and know how to use their social media platforms. But I think with mobile technology, it has become quite obvious to us that it's more and more likely that your customer's first impression of you will be made in the digital area. It's very few times that a customer would walk into your office lately and you will meet him face to face. He will first go and do some research about you. And the impression that you make online is as important as the one that you make in real life. Mobile technology has also provided us with the fastest way to get in touch with anyone. A person in the furthest corner of the world can be reachable, And we are more connected and networked than ever before, and that's definitely not going to slow down. But the number and complexities of these tools that's been made available to us continue to increase, and that is also definitely not going to slow down. But before we get into more detail, I want to introduce you to the millennials. Can I ask a personal question? Are there any people here being born between 1977 and 1995? There's quite a few. So they're the culprits we're talking about now. They're the new entrants to the market. These are the group of people who has now come to age, and they are the target market for companies outside in all spheres. Even if you've been in retail or if it's property or banking, this is the target market. They've grown up with technology always been at hand. They've also seen 9/11. They've been around when the property bubble burst. And the things that they have learned is to be more careful with their money. So they do more research before they buy. They go online and they look at comments and feedback from their friends, from their family. They want to see who the companies are that their peers are doing business with, and they would also like to see if those companies take them seriously. And the way in which they test you is they want to connect with you online. And when they connect with you online, they expect you to respond to their feedback or to their questions, because that tells them if you take them serious or not. They are also very quickly, when they go on Facebook, to like your Facebook page, and I'm specifically referring to your business Facebook page, not a personal Facebook page here. And they will also, on Facebook, ask recommendations about the company. They will tell the world, I'm in the market, I want to buy a property. Has any one of you done business with this company? What can you tell me? Print media and TV advertising doesn't appeal to them as much as it appeals to the older generations that's around. The main thing for them is interaction, interconnectivity, feedback. They want to have their voices heard, but via social media. And keep that in mind, because I think if we look at the property industry going forward, being that the generation coming through that's going to become your customer, embrace social media and social technologies in your business. Very recently, My Broadband conducted a survey. They've published it under the name We Are Social, the 2015 report. Now, the table summarized the most popular social platforms in South Africa, and the percentages represent the total national population who used the platforms in the past month. WhatsApp, I'm sure everybody knows WhatsApp, and we all use it. Facebook Messenger, Google+, Twitter, LinkedIn, Skype, Pinterest, Instagram, and WeChat. But if we look at the ones that's most applicable to businesses, and those are the ones that I'm going to stand still at, is our Facebook, Google+, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Pinterest. So 7 tips for you on how to use your Facebook business page. What are the things that's important? You've now created the page and you want that page to be active. A very good starting point is to post information and articles on your Facebook business page to drive people to your actual website, because that's where they will have and see more information, have access to more information. That's where you will give them the opportunity to search through more townships or price brackets in properties, etc. And once you've done that, the next step for you to do is, and I'm sure there's many bloggers amongst us. Who's got blogs? Who's blogging on the internet? There we've got some active guys. We should have brought a big gift for those bloggers around, because it's very hard work to blog. It takes quite a lot of your time, and also to be relevant and to make sure people keep on going back to your blog, your articles must be very good. But if you blog, post your blog links to your Facebook business page so that when people read your blogs, they can all go back to your Facebook page, and from there, obviously, drive them back to your web page. Use engaging images and videos. As I've mentioned before, millennials, they don't really appreciate television ads or print media ads. They prefer very interactive and very graphical material on a website, a tour of a property, or if you post a photo of a house, show the best architecture of the house. Images are more appealing online to them. Create a two-way conversation. This is the one that I've spoken about earlier, where they want to be able to engage with you. If you publish something, ask for feedback. Write it in such a way that you elicit, spark an interest from people, that they want to engage, that they want to ask you a question. Write it in such a way that the interest would be sparked by the content, and they would almost feel there's something you left out, but they want to know more, and you want them then to write to you or to respond to your publications. But the big key here is to respond back. Never ever, when anybody asks you something on Facebook, ignore them. Even if it's a simple question and you feel, oh, you know, that's public knowledge or general knowledge, please respond to those people, because they will go and tell the world if you haven't responded. Now, we all, especially estate agents, you guys are out there to sell. You're not there to sit in an office the whole day. So you don't want to spend most of your day sitting behind a computer posting articles and publications on your Facebook page. But what I suggest is that you plan your month's post in advance. There are lovely, lovely software. Solo PR Pro is one, for example, that you can use to plan your posts in advance. And what you can do is you can decide 1 week you're going to dedicate there's lots of hype this month specifically around Women's Month, but I don't know how many of you know next month is Human Settlements Month. Now, I know the human settlement sector might not necessarily fall within your area of business, but sometimes it's important for the consumer out there to also know what the country is doing about housing for poorer people. So a good topic for next month could be to write something about human settlements. But you can plan these posts in advance, then you can write them up, and then you can put them in a scheduler. And on that scheduled day, your post will just be scheduled on Facebook. No need for you to spend days and days sitting behind the computer. It might take you 1 day, maybe maximum 2 days, or I'm sure all of you have very good secretaries. I know the admin people in estate agency offices are normally very efficient, and maybe you can teach them to run the schedulers for you. It's also important that you target your posts. It could either be to gender, once again this month with Women's Month. It could have been a good idea to focus your publications specifically on females and maybe events around your neighborhood or in your area or suburb for females. You can also target at age groups. If you're living in an elderly community where there's lots of retiring villages, you can focus your publications on them. Interest, location, etc., but be very specific. Google Plus, and now I'm not talking about Google Search, the Google search engine. I think Google is one of the most innovative companies in the world, and therefore we should take what they bring to the market very seriously. And they have lately done a lot on connecting their platforms to social media as well. But Google Plus is a place where you can build a presence after you've built your page and your profile. That's where you can start building circles of groups. And if there's not a circle of a specific group that you're looking for example, I'm just using random examples and also some feedback that I've received in previous sessions from estate agents. One of the gents at a previous session does a lot of woodwork. And he started to create a circle in his area for woodwork, but specifically for carving front doors. And that has started a new group in his area where a lot of people are getting together, doing this woodwork together, and they then started a small business now marketing all those front doors, and it's actually part of renovations of properties. So you can start your own circles, you can share your content on Google+, and you can engage with your communities, and if there is none, then you can create your own one. But make sure you do create communities where you can also connect with your target customer. It allows for keyword searches, just as Google, so make sure that the message that you want to get through always have a very strong and a keyword that will make sense in your industry to elicit and to draw involvement from your community. But this is the one place where you can establish industry expertise. And I'm sure every one of you in this room would like to be known as the estate agent that's got the most expertise in that area of selling. You know your community. You know when you need to go and do a valuation on a property. You know where to find the best services, best schools. You're knowledgeable and an expert in that area, but also in the price range that you might selling, because some people don't only sell over a broad spectrum. This has also become a very niche market. You've all focused on specific areas in which you want to establish yourself as an expert. And Google Plus is really the platform that you can use that for. Now, if you've done all of the above, and especially on your keyword search, your search engine optimization in google.com will be much, much better. Make sure that you constantly update and make sure that your content is relevant on Google+, and therefore, if you Google yourself or your company, your rating should automatically become higher. How many of you recently Googled yourself? And where did you rank?
Name on page 1. The name of the agency on page 1.
Well done. This man's doing something right. Who else is coming up on the first page? As an individual or as in a company? Company. Individual. Company. Individual. Good. So I think that's an important one to notice, that you not only just come up as a company, but as an individual, because if you come up as the individual, people will go and look and see what you do, and therefore you will build up credibility. We all know that there are some estate agencies that are more prominent because they're part of the bigger groups, but if you as an individual comes up and you're from a smaller company, people are most likely to go and investigate you online, and they're going to see who you are and what you're about, and they're going to take a chance on you. You can also connect Google Plus to your website. And I think you will see that the whole theme around here is all about driving people eventually back to your website. We know people play in many places, as we've seen from the My Broadband survey, but you want them to go to your website in the end. After you've done all of these things, then connect to your peers on the internet or on Google+. It's very important for your professional network to also establish links with your peers. Once you've mastered Google+, but I'm sure many of you are already on Twitter. Twitter hands. I hope you're all going to get very social after this session, because I think there's lots of opportunities. Twitter is really moving in the fast lane. This is where you can present your brand, but what is very important is that on Twitter, your brand presentation must link to all your other profiles. Don't confuse people by adding a different flavor to each of these platforms that you're using. Use a consistent platform and make sure that they will recognize you the first time they go onto your Twitter account. It helps you also to build a very strong foundation, but to build that strong foundation, these are the three most important features under your Twitter profile. Location. People need to know where to find you. And I'm not just saying I'm in Durbanville. Be very specific. Durbanville can be very big. We've got offices in some of the areas like Aurora, and then you will have offices of estate agents in town. Be very specific. Address, telephone number, GPS coordinates. Make sure they know exactly where to find you. Once again, and you guys are going to hear this sentence on all the slides, it is a tool to help you to drive traffic to your website. Write a bio on your Twitter account about yourself. But this must be very striking because you've only got 160 characters. Don't write about your vision and your mission statement. This is where you tell about your successes, of what you've achieved in the property market, accolades that you might have received, or special work that you're doing in your area. Make sure that you stand out from the rest. After you've done that, after you've created your profile and your page, you can start following people in these categories. Your customers. Sometimes we do business with customers that's also professionals, and you would like to follow them. There could be an attorney firm providing specific services after transfer has been done, and you want to follow up if he's providing additional services to the new buyer and seller, helping them to update their will. There are various things that you can do, but definitely connect with people, follow people that links to your customer base. Then connect to your business partners, suppliers, contractors, and vendors. Every now and then you need to make use of an electrical contractor, etc. Build up that network. Other people are going to see you've got a network bigger than just with your peers. Competitors or peers. How many of you are following your competitors on Twitter or any other place? They say sometimes it's better to know your competitor better than yourself. A very good place to follow what your competitors are up to. Trade organizations and professional organizations for your industry. Follow the EAAB, see what they're up to on Twitter. What courses they're running, you will always know about, but there are other projects I can tell you that the EAAB is involved. And one of them is, for example, the Title Deed Restoration Project with Human Settlements. See what the Estate Agency Affairs Board is also up to, and it will just broaden your knowledge about the organization that's there for estate agents. Businesses in your neighborhood. When you deal with prospective buyers and you know what the businesses in your neighborhood are up to and you can share that information with them, you build up credibility. They see you as an agent that know the area and can advise them on where would be the best place to go to for certain services. It might sound even silly, but sometimes people want to know if there's a dog parlor in the area. And because it's important for some people that their dogs get groomed on a regular basis, believe it or not. I believe it. I'm one of those guilty ones. But make sure you know what the businesses are up in your area. Then people that run other professional services in your area, also follow them, link up with them. The one thing I want to warn you about Twitter is once you've established your profile and now you start following people, don't go and sit down in a day and just take a long list and start to follow people, select 10, 20, 30 people in a day to follow. Twitter sees that as type of internet stalking, and they will deactivate your account. So it's something that you need to take very slow if you want to follow people. Otherwise, you will definitely be no longer part of the Twitter community. After you've established your profile and you've set up your connections and your followers, that's when you can actively start to engage with people. I'm sure you all know what it is to tweet, but I'm quickly going to run through it. To tweet is to send someone people a message. A reply is to respond to one of the tweets that you've received. To mention is basically to quote a Twitter message that you've read. A direct message is aimed at a specific follower, and if you want to retweet is when you take another message that's been tweeted and you share it with other people. LinkedIn. I believe there's many people in this room that's on LinkedIn. That's a professional network, and I see a lot of heads nodding. I think the one thing that people sometimes make a mistake with is they think, you know, it's important to show how many connections you have on LinkedIn. That's not the important thing with LinkedIn. It's not a point-scoring exercise as Facebook. On LinkedIn, you only invite the people that you know. If I can ask the question of you, how many of you feel that you can pick up the phone because you've got that number for every connection that you've got on LinkedIn? Can you say, yes, you can phone all of them? Because that's the key thing with LinkedIn. It's a service where you can literally know that your connections are the people that you can fall back on when you need help. It's not like your Facebooks and Twitters, etc. A nice gesture is when you meet someone for the first time and you feel that person can add some value in your business. Send them an invitation to link with you on LinkedIn. That sends out a nice gesture, and it can help you to expand your business network in that way. Don't ever include personal stuff on LinkedIn. Don't post those wacky photos that people sometimes publish on Facebook on their personal sites. Never ever do that on LinkedIn. Then you are absolutely doomed. People will not take you serious if you ever do that. You need to take time to review and refresh your profile. Our lives change, life happens, you move on. You might achieve a great achievement and you want to put that up there. You've done courses and you've developed new skills. You want to add that there. So that's the one place where I would suggest that you really take some time to update your profile constantly. And even here, for the photo that you want to publish about yourself, go through the effort to go to a professional photographer. It's absolutely worth it. People with a proper image, chances are there that they get looked at 70% more than people who don't have a proper picture of themselves on a LinkedIn profile.
So what's for all the social media, LinkedIn, Facebook?
Pardon? Share that with them.
What does it actually translate into? Does it ever translate into sales? You know, General Electric said they're not going to use social media to advertise because it's pointless. So surely it's all about people contact, telephone calls, meetings, lunches. Well, this is for kids, basically, and kids don't have money, so what's the point of doing all of this?
Yeah. So I guess the point is, as we've said, introduce you to the millennials. They've got a different approach, and they are the group that is starting to... I agree with you. I've been an estate agent myself. So I know what that personal interaction means. It is very important. But where do people find you? If once they found you, and they found you on these social media network, that opened up the door for you to have as many personal contacts and interactions with them as possible. It's another way of advertising where, as I've mentioned earlier, these youngers, I know you say they don't have money. They are the people coming into the property market. They are the new consumers coming into the market at the moment. But they don't look for properties on Facebook, on the internet, in a newspaper or on television. That's where they go and look. They want to see who. It's more to investigate you as a person, to see, do you have credibility according to the internet or the digital community, and can they rely on you, what's other people saying about you? So that's part of the point. Question answered satisfactory? Anyone else? A question at this stage?
I'm old school. I don't understand this hashtag. Everything is hashtag, you know, and so if they tweet and it's hashtag this, hashtag that, can you explain for me what does it mean?
So yeah, that can, sorry, I've stepped on your bag. Everything is hashtag. That is the handler, that is the identifier. so that you can connect to that specific tweet, so that it's an identifier. That's basically all that it is.
But you write hashtag, then you write, and then hashtag, again hashtag, all the time?
It's also part of the way in which the system recognizes the message that's been sent. If you look at coding, we're a software company, and when they write codes, we talk about them as dark ears. If you look at a line of code that an agent is or a developer is writing, almost every second word's got dark ears behind them, and that is for the systems to be able to search properly and to identify the message. That's why you have to put a hashtag.
So before the sentence and after the sentence you put hashtag.
That's a lesson on its own.
Not between.
That's a lesson on its own.
Yes, it is about a lesson on its own, but at the moment I can give you the easy answer. It's an identifier. Definitely. Maybe I can send you my book on Twitter and all the hashtags. If you give me your card, I'll send you my book. There's a man that can use my book that I have already read. Okay, as I said, go and review all your connections on LinkedIn to leverage your relationships. And then get feedback from teammates, customers, and people you know. Ask them to tell you what they think of your profile. Pinterest, I think this is more a lady thing. I've picked up in previous sessions that the ladies are the ones who are more active on Pinterest. But Pinterest is, in actual words, just a board, a notice board, where you can pin articles and things of interest to people. But what should you pin? According to research done recently across the world with estate agents, this is the list of things that came out top, what to put on your Pinterest page. Home listings, this is show-off time for you. This is where you can really brag about your prime properties that you've got on sale. Neighborhood information. You want to tell people, if I'm moving from KZN to Gauteng and I want to move into a specific area, I want to know what events, restaurants, shopping centers, etc. is in that area. And then there's also team photos. I think it's very important to show people that you are human and that you've got a team and that you can have fun with your team. And people like to see how you and your team interact with one another on a social, more relaxed environment, so that there you can take the chance of showing a little bit of fun images of you and your team. Interior design inspirations, that's a very thing that I've found in all the previous other sessions that the lady estate agents are saying to me, they do a lot of that for their customers. Where can they find the best interior decorating ideas? Home renovation projects, as I referred earlier, the guy with the woodwork and the carving of the front doors, which eventually resulted in a new business for the community. He started that initiative on Pinterest. And then you can also pin other users to add a variety of material to your boards. So you can invite other people to also come and pin articles or ideas of interest on your own board. A little bit of more advanced Pinterest tips. You can create groups on Pinterest for specific interests, being it renovations, being it interior decorating, being it garden services, being it for value haters, whatever. You can go and create those groups. And then invite your friends and other networks to also join you on Pinterest. Pinterest, for you to be active and to be seen seriously on Pinterest, you have to post between 20 and 25 times per month. So I think the question is, depending on your level of ambition, you can join as many social media network sites as you like. We've all seen there are hundreds others that can be joined. We've highlighted to you the 5 that the South African market is actively using. And there are other website where you can also create a presence to build a relationship and share your interest. But social media, after all, is about meeting great people and sharing ideas. And that meeting great people will hopefully result in that eye-to-eye meeting where you can see the white of the eye, eyeball to eyeball. That's the one you're looking for, hey? But social media is not a one-way communication like all forms of traditional forms of communication. Social media is definitely a two-way communication. So make sure that when you go onto any social media platform that you stay active there and that you don't disappear. Social media users want to interact with one another. They want to hear what other people are thinking. So you have to keep them engaged or you will lose their interest. So we live in this hyper-connected world where many people are on a half a dozen more social media sites, which makes it difficult for us to decide which are the ones that we need to focus on. If you go on the internet and you can just search for My Broadband Social Survey, you will see also the questions that they've asked of people over various categories, the age groups, etc., and you will be able to, on a regular basis, see how they update which social media platforms are the most relevant ones to use. Most people have a Facebook account. Many have Twitter accounts. Professionals are on LinkedIn. Lots of people like YouTube and so on and so on. So the opportunities are absolutely endless. The South African property landscape and electronic integration has also formed a social platform. And this is the platform that you see there in the middle. Let me just move over here. This is the platform that I'm talking about, and you can almost think of it as the property Facebook of South Africa. What happens here is that on Property 24, buyers and sellers link with Property 24 via this platform. Attorneys link with Ghost Convey and the estate agents via this platform. Estate agents, prop control, pay prop 24 information can be shared on the same platform. Even on the financial institution side, we have some of the banks like your Nedbank, Absa, etc., where their messages goes through the same platform that will be shared to the consumer as well as to the estate agent and the other relevant parties as well. Even municipalities. 55 municipalities in the country are already electronically live with electronic rates clearance certificates, and they can also go onto this platform for any whatever reason if they want to see progress on a specific transfer. Because we know some properties in development, especially on the affordable side, the properties get transferred from the municipalities. There's integration between the receiver, Ghost Convey, and this platform, where transfer duty receipts get applied for electronically, but the receiver can track when that matter goes into the deeds office. With government departments, Department Rural Development, Department Human Settlements, they can also link onto this platform to track progress on developments that they are working with. Next one we're busy with is the Survey General. The deeds office specifically for deed searches, but more on the dots tracking, where when an attorney is working on your matter, the attorney can activate a dot search and all that information of what happens with that property happens in this platform. So if we link everything that we've said about social media, where people can go online to one place to find a lot of information, there is already such a platform in existence in the South African property market. And I'm sure many of you, if you don't know about it, you can speak to your Property 24. I think Lo from PayProp's going to be here a little bit later. He'll be able to tell you about it. And if you've got questions about this, 92% of conveyancing firms using Ghost Convey is definitely using that platform to communicate as well. So the internet has definitely turned what used to be a controlled one-way message into real-time dialogue with millions of people. and that is, to quote Daniel Sachs from the Fast Company, and that is definitely not going to slow down. So I hope by just giving you some pointers on what it is to focus from a business point of view on your Facebook or social pages, and spark the interest of those youngsters. You never know, one of them might be an entrepreneur and become a millionaire, and he can become a very good prospect for you. I hope you're all going to embrace social technology and help that to take your businesses forward. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, I thought what I'd do is, I know many of my clients are here today, and most of you probably know what we do, but for the audience that don't know, especially the sales agents, I thought we'd just give you a quick background about who TPN is and what we do. So my history is as a rental agent, and I started my career as a rental agent in the late 1990s. I spent 5 years managing leases, renting to tenants. And in about 1999, I remember very, very clearly, it was a pivotal moment in my career as a rental agent. My one tenant wasn't paying. It wasn't unordinary. Lots of them didn't pay in those days. And I was heading out to his house. It was 6 o'clock in the evening. It was a Friday evening. I was very angry. I was 23. And I was going out there to say to him, look, my friend, this is not working for us. You need to move. You need to pack your stuff, and you need now to exit the property. And that's, quite frankly, exactly what he was doing. He was moving. He was picking his stuff up from unit number 13 and moving it into unit number 12. And that was okay, because unit number 12 wasn't my unit. So good luck to the next landlord. And I thought, you know, this is not right. This is not right, that there are no repercussions for people who think that they can just pack up with 3 months' worth of rent outstanding and move on to the next unsuspecting landlord. How do we as an industry communicate this information with each other? And so it took us about 6 months to create a database, to put it on the net. And then we had the hard task of going around to our friendly peers in the industry saying, we've got this fabulous idea. We'd like to create a database of delinquent tenants. The only problem is we don't quite have the database yet. But we want you to join forces, and we want you to share your experiences with us. And that was 15 years ago. And as the time has moved on, and as there's been change in legislation, we've adapted as a business as to what we do. So we're no longer just about creating a database of delinquent data. We're actually a database about creating positive information about how tenants are in good standing with their landlords. So it's not just delinquent information, it's positive information as well. We are a registered credit bureau. We do have to apply for our license like you do annually, and we do go through an audit process with an external auditor in terms of that process. So who do we collect our data from? We collect our information from our rental agents. We have about 4,000 rental agencies, firms, that register with us, that submit their data to us. Over and above that, we collect our data from micro landlords, private landlords. In fact, landlords that are institutional landlords. So some of our landlords on our portfolio have up to 15,000 units in their personal portfolios that they manage. And we have a wide range, right from the guy who has one granny flat on their property through to 15,000 units. And then, of course, our institutional funds, and our listed funds. So we have the likes of Growth Point, Redefine, Hyprop, the actual funds as well. And that's important because the data then spreads right through residential data to commercial, retail, industrial, student data. I've got some student data insights that I'll share with you today as well. So because we're a credit bureau and because we collect information on tenant behavior, one of our responsibilities is to ensure that that information is accurate information. And regularly we get tenants that will come and dispute the accuracy of their information on the credit bureau. And one of the things that we found is we need to prove the accuracy of the information on the bureau. So if our members are unable to submit accurate corroborating evidence to support the listing, it makes our job a lot more difficult to reinstate negative information on a person's credit profile. And one of the things that we discovered was lease agreements were in very poor shape. Some of them were from 1970. And you know, still today, I'm getting lease agreements that have reference to the Stamp Duties Act. That act was repealed almost 10 years ago. So lease agreements can sometimes prevent us from loading or reinstating default information back on a person's credit profile or tenant's credit profile. So we started a set of lease documents. About 2,000 of our members now access those lease documents and use them. We also found that tenants are more likely to pay their rent when they understand the repercussions of not paying. And so we thought in about 2007, when we started loading payment profile information on tenant behavior, we thought one of the ways that we could encourage a tenant to pay on time or more timeously or in full was if we alerted them to the fact that their information was being loaded with the Bureau. So as soon as our members update a tenant's credit or payment or monthly payment behavior with us on the Credit Bureau, we fire off an SMS to the tenant to tell them how their credit profile has been updated. Either, thank you for paying, your credit profile has been positively updated, or unfortunately, due to your non or late or partial payment, your credit profile has been adversely affected. And we found that by positively and reinforcing the positive payment behavior, tenants continued to pay on time and in full. And where tenants who had the ability to make their payments but weren't making their payments, that late payment or partial payment or non-payment soon changed their priority of how important it was to pay on time and in the first. We do letter of demands as well. We do them registered or by normal mail, email, fax, SMS. We do list defaulting tenants on both the TPN and the TransUnion database, and we collect money that's outstanding. I think it's important, just if I can, spend a few minutes on credit bureaus, because it's quite, most people think, well, credit bureaus are just a database of negative information. That's all they have. It's a blacklist. Most people see credit bureaus as a blacklist. It's quite awful when you're in a social environment and said, oh, where do you work for? I'm the credit bureau. Oh, and people kind of walk away from you. So you're often perceived just to be a source of negative information. There are actually 13 credit bureaus in South Africa. We access 3 of them, and a 4th data set being the Credit Provider Association data. And just so that you know the type of information and the volume of information that the bureaus collect. TPN has 1 million tenants that we collect on. That's payment profile, monthly payment profile information, how the tenant pays their rent on a monthly basis. TransUnion and Experian collect information from a public domain basis on judgment and default information. We add into that Credit Provider Association, it is a further 88 million records per month on 24 million consumers. So what am I telling you? I'm telling you that we collect every single month how people pay their credit card, their personal loans, their store cards, their DSTV, their insurance, their mortgages, their car finance. There's 88 million lines of data per month that come into the credit bureaus. And we obviously access all 4 of those databases for you. In terms of legislation, I always like just to keep you up to date with any changes. So in March of this year, we had the latest change in terms of legislation. You obviously regulated in terms of the Estate Agency Affairs Act and the Rental Housing Act. TPN as a credit bureau, we're regulated in terms of the National Credit Act. There were some amendments in March. Those amendments, I see photographs and whatever being taken. You're very welcome to these slides. You just need to drop me an email, michelle@tpn.co.za, and I'll happily send them through to you. So it's Michelle, MICHELLE @tpn.co.za. I'll happily send them to you. So the changes in legislation, there were a couple of changes, some of them quite alarming, some of them not so much, but as they relate to your relationship with us, there were changes to the retention periods in terms of the categories of information. So judgment information, as you know, it's a court order. The credit bureaus will store that information for a period of 5 years, although it's actually collectible for a period of 30 years. So if someone has taken judgment against a delinquent tenant, or for example, if you're a managing agent and it's in terms of a body corporate, you've actually got 30 years to collect on that judgment. Default information, credit bureaus used to be able to store default information for 3 years. It was then reduced to 2 years. It's now been reduced to 1 year. So if we, as TPN, as a credit bureau, if we'd remained the type of business that we had started 15 years ago, our delinquent database of tenant information, we would only be able to store that type of information for 12 months. It's not as bad as it sounds because we've still got payment profile information. And payment profile information stays on a credit bureau for a period of 5 years. So that's fantastic. There's been no changes to that. Inquiry information is now only stored for a period of 1 year. It used to be 2 years. So you know when there's footprinting on the inquiry, so who else has done inquiries on a person, that information stays for a period of 1 year. There's been a change in terms of loading defaults onto the database. So in the past, if one of your tenants had defaulted with you, you send them a 20 business day letter of demand with your notice of intention to list. You then list the information on the credit bureau if it's still outstanding. The change has now been made that says that the tenant must be 3 consecutive billing cycles in arrears before you can load a default against them. So it's making the time process to get a default onto the bureau a lot longer. It also means that the severity of the default needs to be more extreme. It can't just be that a tenant is 1 month in arrears by the time you list them. They've got to be 3 consecutive billing cycles. And if the tenant makes good on their account prior to that 3-month billing cycle, you can never get to the point of listing. So if they make a partial payment, they're still in arrears. The point around that is that it's going to take more time before you can load, and a lot of people who will then settle their account prior to that 3 billing cycles will never get to the point to having default listed against them. The payment profile then becomes a key component to a person's credit profile, because you would still see the underlying partial payments every month leading up to a default, which may never actually get there because they remain partial paid, or you might see a did not pay, paid on time. So you would still see the 2 months of delinquent behavior in terms of the payment profile. And this cuts across not just rentals, this cuts across the entire credit industry. So all types of credit providers have to follow the same rules. So somebody might be in default on their personal loan and their credit card or a store card. Those credit providers would also have to wait 3 consecutive billing cycles before listing. So you will see a reduction in the number of defaults that are going to come onto the credit bureau as a result of that. And it's then very, very important that you access payment profile information through the Credit Provider Association to see that underlying data. I hope that makes sense to everyone. There's also been a change in the default removal process, which I personally think is a good idea. The idea that we list people on a credit bureau, what are we trying to do? Well, it's not just about being nasty and getting our own back, although it sometimes feels quite good. That's not the point. The point that we're trying to do is we're trying to collect the arrear that's outstanding. And so our responsibility now in terms of the amendments is that once a tenant comes and settles their arrear with us and there was a listing against a bureau, you would have a responsibility to come back and remove the default listing. The payment profile remains intact. No changes need to be made to the payment profile data, just the default needs to be removed. The amnesty, as you know, there was an amnesty a year ago, and we deleted, on 3.5 million consumers, we deleted 4.5 million defaults overnight, one go. And within 12 months, we're back to that number. Which makes sense. Which makes sense because the underlying debt wasn't, there was no removal of the underlying debt. The consumers still had the responsibility to go and pay the underlying debt back. Simply because it appeared that they had better credit profiles, they could potentially go back out into the marketplace and get more credit. But they were still just as over-indebted prior to the process as they were after the process. And defaults only remain on a person's credit profile for 12 months in any event. So it's going to build back up, which it did. Just some notes on a lease agreement. Some of the things that we feel are quite important from our perspective when dealing with disputes. I'm going to come to the case study just now, but the first is this written versus verbal lease agreements, or written lease agreements with verbal changes. The tenant and I agreed that if your non-variation clause is very, very important, your lease agreement, if it is written, then you can state there can be no change to the lease agreement if it's not in writing. So for us, written lease agreements are very important. As you know, the Rental Housing Amendment Bill, which is sitting on the President's desk waiting to be signed off at some point, maybe, will require that all lease agreements must be in writing. But from good business practice, we think it's a good idea. The signatory of the tenant versus listing the other occupants versus the surety. This is very important to us as well. And you'll see just now when I talk a little bit about student data, that you cannot load payment profile and you cannot load defaults on a credit bureau unless it's against the signatory lessee or signatory tenant. You can't load against the other occupant. So it's very important to us that you list on the lease agreement who are the co-tenants, husband and wives, brothers and sisters, friends, etc., and that they are jointly and severally liable. Another important one for us is the actual payment due date. The payment, most leases say the rent is due on or before enter date, usually the 1st. For us, it's important that the lease says the rent is due and payable and must have cleared the agent's bank account on or before enter due date, usually the 1st. So the clearing is quite important. Obviously, you need consent to perform an inquiry. And we prefer that you put that into both your application and your lease agreement, and obviously that you have consent to share the information with the Bureau. That's not a legal requirement, but we feel that it's a good thing to have in your lease agreements in any event. The case study that I just quickly want to share with you is about 2 months old. It is a rental housing tribunal case. It was a matter of a tenant who cancelled their lease earlier. It was a 24-month lease. They cancelled after 16 months. They vacated, giving 2 months' notice. There was no rent outstanding, but there was an amount for cancellation penalty, which was based on the management fee of the procurement fee of the estate agent. And the tenant said, "Over my dead body will I pay it." And the case went to the tribunal, and tribunal found they tried to mediate, and the tenant kept saying, "It'll be over my dead body." She did, as it turned out, have to pay the procurement fee, or what the tribunal deemed was reasonable procurement fee for the agent's commission. So the size of the rental market, I always like to just bring us all back to speed. This is based on Stats SA General Household Survey data. The rental housing market is up to 3.2 million households in rental accommodation. And you can see that there's some funnies in there, like people living in caravans or tents, people living in unspecified units. So I just like to pull out only the formal data, because I think that that's really what we are talking about as an industry. And there are 2.5 million households renting in formal accommodation in South Africa as of 2013 Stats SA data. And there are a couple of interesting ones for me. You'll see that the people living in houses, formal houses, has stayed pretty flat. It's sitting around the million mark. But people that are renting in rooms or granny flats have increased from 128,000 to 385,000 in 5 years. And this indicates to me that there are a lot of individuals that are supplementing their income by renting out rooms in their houses. They're not investors. They're forced into a position to try and generate further income by renting out space in their own personal homes. The flats and apartments have also grown nicely, 477 to 548,000, but the townhouses also a nice big one, 86,000 to 132,000 in just 5 years. So it gives us a good indication of what type of houses people are looking for. We do this based on our data. So this is based on the different value brackets that we've identified that people rent for. So people that rent for below 3,000 Rand per month, people that rent between 3,000 and 7,000, 7 and 12, 12 and 25, and 25,000 Rand plus. There are people that rent for 130,000 Rand per month unfurnished. It is mind-blowing. these are the kind of people that are building somewhere else. So they've sold, they're now building, and they need a 6-month or 12-month place to live in the interim. But what I find most interesting is that 82% of tenants rent for below 3,000 Rand per month. 23% of them rent below 3,000, but the majority, 59%, fall in between the 3,000 to 7,000 category. And just so that the second graph just shows from 1,000 Rand to, let's call it 7,500 Rand, how that trend works in 500 Rand segments. So you can see how the majority of those are between 3,500 and 6,000 Rand per month. The average age of a tenant at the moment is 30. This is increased from 27. So this is telling me that people are forced to remain in rental accommodation for longer, probably because they're not getting bonds, and so they're staying in rented accommodation for longer before exiting. The second one is about our student accommodation, where you can see the average age of a student is 21 and the average age of a parent is 53. I pulled this in because we did some interesting stats based on student data. We tried to identify, is it better to rent to a student or is it better to rent to the parent? And the parent comes up trumps. It's beautiful. The average good standing of a South African tenant is 84% in good standing, whereas for a parent paying on behalf of their tenant, it's 94%. And if the tenant has to pay on his own, it's only 77%. So you can see there's a huge change between getting your money from a parent or a student. If you were to look at, oopsies, that was me. If you were to look at how long a lease lasts. The leases are generally 12 months, starting in 1st of January, 59, 60% of them start in January 1 of each year. If the parent pays, you will get paid for 11 and a half of the 12 months. If the student pays, you will get paid for 9 and a half months out of the 12 months. So that's the average age. The good standing of tenants in general in South Africa, 67% of tenants will pay on time and in full, 11% will pay late, 6% will pay in grace. That's effectively 84% of tenants will pay by the end of the month. It's starting to come down. So we peaked last year at 85, 86%, and we're starting to drop off. We had a drop off of 1.5% between Q4 of last year and Q1, which is normal. That's a holiday syndrome. Your tenants who generally have a problem over the holiday season making payment on the 1st of January. We expect that. It does happen. But it normally improves in Q2 of each year, and we haven't had that improvement. And I think one of the reasons for that is we had an interest rate hike in July of last year. And we normally have a 6 to 9 month lag in tenant behavior deteriorating as a result of that. And we've just had another rate hike, and it'll be another 6 to 9 month lag, and we'll have another deterioration. So I do want to warn you that tenant behavior is going to start becoming more negative. I love this slide, and I'm not, so let's have a little bit of fun. This tells us what people think are the most important accounts that they need to pay on a monthly basis. So who thinks, or who can tell me what consumers will pay first when they get their paycheck? We find our DSTV quite important, and then our cell phone account. And that's because if you don't pay your DSTV or your cell phone, you're going to get cut. So the first account, after all that fun stuff, the first account that people pay is their mortgage. And you'll see that that sits at 91%. So for our sales agents, when you are frustrated that the banks are not lending, it's because their little worm line at the top of this graph sits at 91%. They cannot afford for that graph to deteriorate. So they need to ensure that they are lending to quality borrowers. So the first account that gets paid is the mortgage. The second account is the blue line, and that is rent, and that is sitting at 84%. So what that tells me is that the roof over your head is priority payment number one, whether it is a mortgage or whether it is a rental. That is fantastic for us. Because right down below that in the 70% sit your secured lending, your personal loans, your unsecured lending, your credit facilities, etc. Overall, consumers are impaired to the extent that nearly 1 in 2 consumers are impaired. That means that 54.9 or 55% of consumers are in good standing overall in terms of their whole credit. So when it comes to identifying a quality tenant, if we were to say, I'm not going to rent to a consumer with impaired credit record, we would have no one to rent to, given that half the population has impaired credit records, and the banks aren't lending to them in terms of mortgages, so they're coming to us for rentals. And if that, as an industry, was our credit policy, we would have a lot of homeless people, or a lot more homeless people. So we cannot simply make it a policy that we don't rent to people that have impaired credit records. But when it comes to understanding their priority of payment, if we can identify those that have a history of paying their rent on time and in full, all of a sudden we have something to base our decision on in terms of their suitability as a tenant. I just thought I'd put this graph in to show you the difference between how people pay in terms of their different rental brackets. Our tenants that pay between 3,000 and 7,000 Rand, remember that's 59% of the population of the market, are one of the best performings. They're not the best. The best is 7 to 12, but it's a much smaller portfolio of tenants. The 3,000 to 7,000 Rand renters are 85% in good standing, which is above the national average. You've only got a 5% did not pay ratio versus 9% in the below 3,000 Rand categories. The tenants that are most challenging are the ones in the below 3,000 Rand category and the tenants in the above 25,000 Rand category. The above 25,000 Rand category, mostly because they're very difficult to get on-time payment from. Only 54% of them pay on time and in full. Only 1 in 2 tenants who rent for above 25,000 Rand pay on time and in full. The average rental price, as we said, now remember, a lot of people ask me, well, why is your data so different to PayProp's? Their average rental is over 6,000 Rand. Remember, we have a much broader spectrum of people that we collect data from. So we're collecting data from the inner city, as an example, the different inner cities around the country. Where PayProp is very much centered around estate agents that collect 300 tenants on their portfolio. They've got a certain segment of the market that we look after. We've got a much broader segment of the market that we look after. So our average rental is 5,859 Rand, and the student data shows us that students, if they're paying the rent themselves, will pay 3,000 Rand per month. If they can calm mom and dad into paying the rent, they're happy to rent for 4,589 Rand per month. Rental escalations, as we see them at the moment, are 6.17%, and we expect it to remain in the 6 to 8% bracket. We look at deposit to rent values. Again, the national average is 106%, but you'll see that the lower the rent is, the closer the rent is to 1 month deposit. And then as the rent gets higher, the deposit requirements increase with it. Electricity to rent. We see that the guys that battle the most are the below 3,000 Rand category, because 19%, nearly 20% of additional costs go towards electricity. And as you move down to the higher rentals, you expose less in terms of a percentage value to what your electricity costs will be. Our gross average yield at the moment, this is what we do with FMB. So we look at the FMB data, the average house value versus the average rental value from TPN. And on a per property basis, we are able to establish the gross national rental yield. And it's currently sitting at 8.77%. Remember, this isn't the net yield. So from this still needs to be deducted the expenses of the property. We do it across the different areas, so the value of the area, and you'll see that the more affordable areas achieve a much better yield, nearly 9.75%. And then as the properties get more expensive, the yield drops down to 7.5%. We do it across the different title of the property, full title versus sectional title, and the size of the property as well. And you will see that the smaller properties in sectional title achieve a better yield than your full titles. So just compare 1 bedroom sectional title, you'll get a nearly 10% yield versus a 3+ bedroom full title, you're dropping down to 7.11%. So certainly from an investor perspective, and if you are a sales agent and you're looking, or you have investors that are looking, commentary would be around the small, neat sectional titles, easier to maintain sectional title units would obviously be a better choice. Any questions? Thank you.